There are people who inherit knowledge, and there are people who go looking for it. Michael Scot lived at a time when Europe believed it already understood the shape of the universe, ordered, closed, explained. But beyond its borders, in languages it did not speak, lay entire systems of thought. To cross a sea is one thing. To cross an intellectual boundary is another. Michael Scot moved between worlds, Latin and Arabic, theology and astrology, faith and forbidden curiosity. Some called him scholar, others called him sorcerer. He left behind translations, calculations, and rumours, and in the space between them, a reputation that refused to settle. Michael Scot was born around 1175, likely in Scotland. Little is certain about his early life. Even his origins blur at the edges. He studied in the universities of Europe, Paris, perhaps Oxford, where theology and philosophy were guarded carefully. Knowledge was structured, authorized, limited, but Europe's libraries did not contain everything. Beyond the Latin West and Islamic Spain and Sicily, ancient Greek works had survived, expanded, debated, refined. Scot would go south. In Toledo, recently reclaimed by Christian forces but still culturally layered, languages overlapped. Arabic manuscripts circulated beside Latin texts. Jewish, Muslim, and Christian scholars worked in proximity. Here, Michael Scot entered the translation movement. He studied Arabic. He encountered Aristotle not as fragment, but as system. Works on astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy, filtered through centuries of Islamic scholarship, stood waiting. Translation was not mechanical. It required interpretation. Scot became a bridge. Among the texts he helped translate were works attributed to Aristotle, including treatises on the heavens and natural philosophy. For medieval Europe, this was destabilizing. Aristotle offered a cosmos governed by cause and motion, not mystery alone. To introduce such works into Latin Christendom was to widen its intellectual horizon. Scholars now debated motion, matter, celestial spheres. The universe became more intricate. Michael Scot did not invent these ideas. He transported them. Sometimes that is enough. His reputation carried him north again, to the court of Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II. Frederick valued inquiry over superstition, science over rumour. At court, Scot served as astrologer and scholar. Astrology at the time was not dismissed as fantasy. It was intertwined with astronomy, a method of reading order in the skies. He advised on celestial alignments. He calculated eclipses. To read the heavens was to interpret divine structure. But proximity to power invites scrutiny, and fascination can become suspicion. Legends gathered quickly. It was said he could summon demons, that he predicted his own death, that he pierced the veil between worlds. Later writers, including Dante Alighieri, would place Michael Scot among magicians, not scholars. In Inferno, he appears among those who claimed forbidden foresight. Reputation had shifted. Where others saw mathematics, some saw magic. The boundary between science and sorcery was thin in the medieval imagination. Scot walked it openly. Michael Scot also wrote original works, including treatises on astrology and natural philosophy. In his Liber Introductorius, he attempted to systematize the cosmos, zodiac, planets, elemental forces. He believed the universe was legible, structured, ordered. To study it was not rebellion against God, but participation in divine design. Yet knowledge always carries risk. To explain too much can appear to trespass. What made Scot unusual was not belief in astrology. Many believed. It was range. He moved between languages, disciplines, and courts. He absorbed Islamic scholarship and rendered it in Latin form. He navigated theology without surrendering curiosity. He did not confine himself to one intellectual territory. In doing so, he widened Europe's. One legend claims he foresaw his own death, that he would be killed by a small stone falling from above. To avoid fate, he wore protective headgear. Years later, during Mass, a pebble supposedly fell from the ceiling, striking his head. The injury was minor, but he removed his helmet, only to die later from the wound. Whether true or not, the story endured. A scholar undone by prediction. Knowledge folding back upon itself. Michael Scot likely died around 1235. What remains is divided. On one side, translator of Aristotle, bridge between intellectual worlds, court scholar to an emperor. On the other, magician in poetry, figure of rumour, man whispered about in chronicles. History remembers him in fragments, half illuminated, half shadowed. Some lives clarify the world. Others unsettle its boundaries. Michael Scot belonged to the second kind, a man who crossed the invisible and returned carrying something Europe had forgotten. Some stories fade, others wait to be heard,